Hey guys, this is New Sensei. As you're probably aware by now, there's been a huge buzz with the Olympic Games kicking off in Rio. And already in the archery events, there's been a lot of excitement and success. The South Korean men's team and the women's team taking the gold medals in their respective events. The USA men's team taking silver and the Australian men's team making history by being the first Australian team to win a medal at the Olympic Games, having scored bronze over their Chinese opponents. And of course, there'll be more excitement in the days to come as we bear witness to the individual events. Now, for people who are watching archery on TV right now and are completely new to the whole sport, there might be a lot of confusion as to exactly what's going on. What's happening? What equipment are they using? How far are they shooting? And how does the whole thing work? And perhaps by answering these questions, this might inspire you to take your first steps in archery and perhaps become a future Olympic champion. Firstly, let's talk about archery equipment. For many people, the image of an archer is based on the figure of Robin Hood shooting a wooden longbow. But the archer you see in world competition on TV is much different. The bows are much fancier, looking nothing like the bows used in times of old. And you might say that these bows are heavily sportized, just as the modern competition pistols and rifles used in the shooting events look nothing like their military counterparts. Modern target sport bows are far different in design and materials compared to historical war bows. The materials today include fiberglass, carbon and aluminium as used in bows and arrow designs. Additionally, modern target bows have more accessories to make aiming and shooting a bit more consistent and easier, including sights, stabilizers, and clickers. These additional items don't necessarily make it easier to shoot, but it does make it more consistent for the archer to achieve tighter groupings and higher scores over longer distances. Fundamentally, the function of the bow is still the same. You pull it back and you let go. The archer still has to do the work. It's also important to note that the archery you see at the Olympic Games is only one classification. In world archery, there are several different types of bows that can be used. The one you see in the Olympic Games and the only recognized Olympic discipline is freestyle recurve, which describes the type of bow and the accessories used. The other major classification which is used at competitive level is compound. Now, compound bows are far more technical, they're far more consistent, and they're far more competitive in terms of scores. That said, it's currently not recognized as an Olympic event, so you only see this in other world archery events. Another question that is frequently asked is, how far do they shoot? Now, the target you see here is a standard Olympic target. It's 122 centimeters across. Now, the distance I'm standing at is 7 meters. Now, on TV, these targets look really big and looks really easy. You do get to see the arc of the arrow going over the target and slamming into the bullseye, but it isn't actually that easy. While this 7-meter line looks nice and big, the actual distance shot in the Olympics is 70 meters. Let's see what that looks like outside. So this is the 70-meter shooting line at my archery range. Now the target you see at the end is actually smaller, an 80-centimeter target face, but you should get a fair idea of how far this is. If this doesn't make sense to you, I'm going to actually walk the whole distance. Yep, it took me nearly a minute to cover the distance. It's definitely not as close as it looks on TV. and for the record, an arrow could probably cover this distance in around 2 seconds. The final question, and the one that fascinates me the most, is how do you actually get there? How do you compete on the world stage at the Olympic Games and get that gold medal? And the answer is starting in places like this. We are a long way from Rio, but the true dreams begin in grassroots clubs like this one. So how does one go from never holding a bow to becoming a world champion? The first step is at club level. What you should do is look for your closest local clubs and find out when they run their introductory sessions or beginner sessions. They will teach you how to shoot using basic equipment and teach you good forms and good habits. Once you acquire a taste for archery, you may then opt to look at going for a more advanced course or becoming a member and looking at buying your own equipment. Getting your first bow kit is a huge milestone. Archery is a very personalized sport, and owning your first bow means that you can change things, swap things out, find out what works for you. And owning your own bow means you take the first step in owning your archery journey. This journey is not a short journey. Don't expect to become an expert marksman within weeks or even months. Expect to spend years learning and honing the skills needed to become a consistent archer. Archery is one of those sports which take a short time to learn but a long time to master. You will go through the highs and lows of archery as you practice, and going through those highs and lows is part of the archery journey. Even at an early stage, start looking at participating in club shoots. This may be a regular casual club shoot, or it may be a club tournament. Even inter-club tournaments and low state level tournaments aren't that daunting. You may think, no, I'm not good enough, but don't worry. Many people take their first competitive steps in archery through local tournaments. The more you do, the more experience you get and the more hungry you feel in trying to do better in your archery. When you start doing regular events, including state championships and ranking events, you will start accumulating ranking points. You may then start to appear in state and national rankings, and your performance will be tracked by the National Archery Association. If you perform exceptionally well over a period of time, you may be identified as a person of interest, and this may open up opportunities for state team selection, high performance training, or even national team selection. And let's say you do make it on the national selection shortlist. What then? What events do you do to get into the Olympics? The Olympic tournament features 128 athletes, 64 men and 64 women. A National Olympic Committee or a country has the ability to send a maximum of 6 archers, 3 men and 3 women, but the exact number depends on how many spots have been allocated based on previous qualification. A number of spots is allocated to the host nation. In this case, Brazil is allowed to send the maximum number of 3 men and 3 women. Additionally, a number of spots is also given at the discretion of the Tripartite Commission. The remainder of the spots is allocated based on national team performance in prior events. Each event has a certain number of spots up for grabs, which means that a country can qualify up from 1 to 6 archers based on how well their individual athletes perform. The biggest allocation comes from the World Championships, followed by several World Cup events, which happen throughout the year. Normally, the team spots take precedence. What that means is that a national team that ranks highly in the team event will be given team spots. Now, a team consists of 3 archers, so if a team qualifies for the team event, all 3 archers also qualify for the individual event. Once the team-based spots are given away, the remainder go to the individual event. So individual rankings in these events will qualify the nation for individual spots in the Olympic Games. This is why some countries will send 3 archers others will send only one. It's based on whether the country has qualified for a team spot or an individual spot. Outside of the World Championship and the World Cups, there are also regional and continental events, such as those based in Oceania, Africa, Europe, Asia, and so on. It's important to note that an archer does not earn a spot for themselves. They earn a spot for the national team. For example, if I were to represent Australia in the next World Cup and I finish second, that means I might qualify Australia for the next Olympic Games. That doesn't mean I get that spot. The selection process is purely based on the National Olympic Committee, who might have criteria such as ranking, recent performance, and so on. It's not uncommon for an archer to earn a spot for the national team but not get that spot. So let's fast forward a bit and let's say I've been selected to represent Australia at the Tokyo 2020 Games. What happens then? The first part of the competition usually isn't broadcast on TV, and not many people know about this. What you normally see on TV is the knockout elimination round, which is a match play format. The first event, however, which normally happens on day 0 before the games begin, is a ranking round. This is shot at 70 meters and all archers shoot 72 arrows for a maximum score of 720. Your performance in this ranking round will give you a C. This will therefore match the best athlete against the lowest ranked athletes, and ideally that means that the best athletes don't face each other in the initial knockout rounds, saving the competition to the very end. It is worth noting that you do need a minimum qualifying score of this particular ranking round to even get into the Olympic event. Now that said, if you don't perform well on the day, you still get ranked and seeded, but you might not get a very high place, which means you might face harder opponents or more high ranking opponents much earlier in the knockout round. Additionally, this ranking round is where the world records are drawn from. Unlike in sports like running and swimming, where records are smashed in the actual race, the final elimination rounds in archery are knockout only based on set points, similar to, say, tennis. So the only scores which are valid for world record claims are the ones in the ranking round. Once the ranking round is done and all the athletes are seeded, it proceeds to a traditional knockout format. The round of 64, the round of 32, the round of 16, and finally the quarterfinals, the semi-finals, and the grand final. The knockout rounds are shot at 70 meters using a set point system. The archer who shoots a higher score in each 3-arrow end will win 2 set points. If it's a drawn end, it's 1 point each. The first archer to reach 6 points wins the set and therefore goes through to the next round. Should neither archer reach 6 points by 5 ends, it goes down to a 1-arrow shoot-off. The person who is closest to the center of the target wins. That's basically how archery at the Olympic Games works. From the very bottom at the grassroots club level, rising up to the very top of the podium at the Olympic Games. So hopefully that answers most of the questions you might have about Olympic archery. Of course, if I haven't covered something that you want to know about, feel free to ask below. This is New Sensei, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.